from a secondary index using some of the data plane operation. After this, let's see how to design a table. So to design a table, first you are planning the things. Planning means see this table design starts with a planning. First, you are asking a questions to yourself, which are the components, which are the components which are which you need for your which are the features which you need for your applications. So first, we are understanding the application needs. On the basis of that, we are designing our database. Then let's see how to design a database. So as you have selected DynamoDB for your applications, so this DynamoDB is a NoSQL database where developer don't start the process by building a schema. First, they are trying to know the questions which they have to answer to the clients. So they are identifying the application's access patterns, which is required by the operations they need to support. So they are understanding the data size, data shape, and data velocity. What this means? Data size means we are knowing how much data will be stored. Data shape, data shape means when the query is processed. So this NoSQL database organize the data in its shape in the databases, which basically corresponds with that will be queried. So that data shape is a key factor in increasing the speed and scalability. And if I talk about the velocity, velocity basically increasing the number of physical partitions that are available for process queries and efficiently distributing the data across those partitions. So that is basically your data velocity. So we are keeping all these things whenever we are designing our DB. If I talk about our applications, so for our applications, what are the features we need? Like we want to list all the nodes for a user. If someone wants to search a specific node, that feature will be available. If someone wants to search for a favorite node, that feature is also available. So these are some questions which you have to answer by creating your DB. Now let's see the partition key design. So primary key is uniquely identifying the each items in a DynamoDB tables. And this DynamoDB is supporting a two types of primary keys, partition key and partition and sort primary key. So basically partition key is basically which is a simple primary key and which is having a one attribute. And composite key is basically having a two attributes, partition key and a sort key. Sort key is basically used to sort the order of a partition in a composite primary key. So whenever you are designing the partition keys around some common access patterns, and this partition key level of uniqueness among the items in a tables. So this is known as the high cardinality. So see, the two examples are there. For like this table is same. This table we are using two components. We are having a composite key. We are having a part. We are using partition key and sort key, and here we are using only partition key. And this here node ID is a partition key. Here user ID is a partition key. So if I am running the same query, get all nodes for user ID student C. I am running the same query in both in these two tables where my query will be expensive. In which case my query will be expensive. First one or second one? Yeah, correct. On the first one, my query will be expensive. Why? Because here I am scanning the full tables because only one attribute is there. But here I'm using a composite key, so there is no need to to scan the whole table. That's why here my query is inexpensive. Now index design. So index design is basically revolves around organizing your data to enable efficient access to your application's queries. So we are organizing the data by using the secondary indexes, keys, like we are keeping the related data together. Also, you can use a sort order and distribute the queries. So these are some factors which you can include, or these are some principles which you can include when you are designing the table. Also, while you are designing a table, also you can choose the initial throughput, like how what about your RCU? What about your WCU? All those things we will consider while designing the table. So this all these things we complete like all these things we will see. And also at the times of our table creations, also we can define these things: provisioned capacity or on-demand capacity. Let me tell you about the provision capacity and the on-demand capacity. If we talk about the on-demand capacity is flexible billing options that is capable of serving thousands of requests without a capacity planning. I'm not planning anything. If there is a high demand, then the WCU and RCU will be automatically increased. So I'm not planning anything. That is on demand. So on demand is basically good options for unknown workloads or unpredictable traffic. If I talk about the provision means you are specifying a number of read and writes per second for your applications. If you have a predictable traffic, like you know that at this day and on that day there will be high traffic. So in that case, you will be used provision methods. Like you can set like on this time the RCU will be 10, WCU will be 5. So likewise, I can define. So that is your provision method. Now, after that, after one your plan is done, then we are creating our tables. How you will create a tables? By using these operations: create, update, list, delete. Let's see these operations one by one. So first, we will see the table creation using Java. This is a Java example how to create a table in Java. So this portion of a script is basically defining the DynamoDB table's primary key and a sort key. So primary key is basically your user ID and node ID is basically your sort key. And this script is defining the nodes table schema. Primary key is user ID as the partition as and the partition key by the highest, and node ID is the sort key as the range. This is the another example in .NET. .NET example how to create a table. Here also I am defining all those things: partition key and the sort key. So you can see this as and that means the string, number, user ID. These are the item attributes name, and these are the attribute type. I can do in the .NET. And also I can also I can also use waiters for that. So you must wait until the DynamoDB creates the tables and set the status to active. So this create table response included a table description, like table descriptions property that provide the necessary table informations. So you can also call the describe table method of the client to get the table information anytime. Let's see how to create a table using a CLI. So this is a CLI command, how you will create a table using a CLI. This same things I have already provided to you in a document. So on the basis of your CLI command, this type of document will be created where all the attributes name are there, attribute types are there, all those things are there. We DynamoDB has no schema. Why do we define schema here? See, schema means it's not like the no schema is there. Schema is not fixed. Schema is dynamic. Schema is there, but it is not fixed. That means if something I have created and afterwards I want to change it, I want to change in some things that I can do in DynamoDB. But in RDS, you cannot do that thing. RDS is having a static schema. Can you show and explain the throughput selection again? Throughput, basically, I am defining the WCU and RCU. This one. Throughput means basically for the table, I am defining my RCU and WCU. So we are done with this also. Now, see this. We can also use waiters for the SDK in Java. So this Java providing a waiter features that you can use wait for a resource to transition to a desired state. And without a waiter written into your code, this polling for a desired state requires writing your code that repeatedly check the status. So using a waiter in the DynamoDB creations, it's not required. So better make it more efficient to abstract out the polling logic into a simple API call. So what is the steps? First, we are defining the methods. Then we are creating a DynamoDB tables. then we are printing the status through this system out println as it is a Java code. So this is how you this is how you can update the table and delete a table in Java. This is how you can list the table in Java. For this, we are using this function list table. This is the .NET example, how to update a table by update table request, delete a table by delete table request. This is how to list the table by new list table request. And we are listing the tables like this. How to do in Python? Python code is not mentioned here in the PPTs, but you can refer the documentation. I have provided one documentation to you. Go with the documentation for Python. Go to 3 documentation provided to you. Search for DynamoDB, and then all the codes are there. Once our create table is done, then we will see how to load the data. Load the data means we if you want to insert some item inside it, either it can be a single item or either you want to batch operations you want to do. So once our table is done, then we will create an item inside this. So now how to create item using a CLI? So for using a CLI, we can use this type of command, DynamoDB put item, and here I am defining the attributes inside the table. So this put item is basically creating a new item inside your tables, and if any item with the same keys already exist in the table, it will replaced with the new items. So you can also perform a conditional put operations like add the new items if if the exist if it is not exist, and if it is exist, then replace this with the new one. So you can do this you can also put the conditional put item. You can also do the conditional put item. And you can also return the items attribute values in the same operations by using the return value parameters. Whenever you are adding the items, the primary key attributes are only required attributes, and those attribute values cannot be null. Now, after the put items, how to delete the multiple items in a one go. So this is the this is the CLI commands, how to how to delete the multiple item in one go. For that, we are using this batch write item. So this batch write item operation can contain 25 individual put item and delete item request, can write up to 16 MB of data. So we are using this batch get items to delete or put the multiple item in a one go. If I talk about the batch get item is basically read up to 100 items, and read and batch write items, it can delete up to 25 items. Once we have done once we are done with our database, like we have created our tables and inserted some entry inside it, then we will see how to process that data, how to read the data, how to query the data, how to scan the data now. So let's see read an item. So to read the items, we are using this get item command for the CLI. Get item is basically providing the eventually consistent read by default. So to read an item from a DynamoDB table, we are using this get item operations. And get item operation is returning a set of attributes for the items with a given primary key. And if there is a no matching items, get item does not return any data. So no item element will be in the response. Now let's see how to query the data. So this query operation in the DynamoDB finds finds item based on the primary key values. So if you want to specify the search criteria, you can use a key condition expressions by specifying the partition key name and the value as the equality conditions like A equal to B, or A is greater than B, or A is greater than less than B. Likewise, you can define the some conditions for querying. Now paginating results. So in the DynamoDB, it's also we can get the paginating results from the query operations. So by default, DynamoDB is returning a result of 1 MB or in less size, and those results are divided into pages. An application can process the first page, then second page, then so on. So to determine whether your query will be written in a paginated result or not, you can construct a query and check for the last evaluated key in the result. If the result contains last evaluated key element, it's not null. Then you are constructing a new query request with the same perimeter as the previous ones. So it will give you the your data in a perinated form. After the paginations, let's see how to scan the data. Yeah. So this scan operation is there, and you know about the scan operation. So scan operation is basically reading the every item in the tables or a secondary index. And this filter expression is applied after a scan finishes, but results are also returned. So this scan is basically consuming the same amount of read capacity, regardless of whether the filter expression is present or not. And this scan example scans the entire nodes tables and returns only the items which is related to the for this examples, we are talking about the student A. So if I am scanning this type of data, so I am getting the only the information of student A. Now, how to choose between a query and a scan? So you know that in the query you are getting the specific data, and the scans it is basically reading the every items of the every items inside the tables. So sometimes you know that query is more efficient in terms in if I ask you which is more efficient, query and scan, so you can say that query is more efficient. But sometimes you have to scan the whole table. So sometimes scan is the only options. So but there is a one feature named as parallel table scan. Parallel table scan can distribute your processing to perform the scan operations more quickly. If you want to scan your tables, so you can use the feature of parallel scans that will parallelly scanning your data, and it is more efficient in terms of like in related to the simple scan. In terms of simple scans, you can use the parallel scans. Let me show you the parallel scan. So this is the example of a parallel scans. We are having a segments like segment one, segment zero, and segment two. So likewise, we can perform the parallel scan on on every segment. So it will give me a more efficient result. So if you're having a larger table or and you want to scan that, so it will take a more time to complete the scans. So in instead of using that scans, you can use the parallel scans on that data. So it is giving you the high throughput, high read throughput, and this DynamoDB is also distributing a large tables data across a multiple physical partitions. So this scan operation can only read only one partition at a time. And this throughput of a scan is also constrained by the maximum throughput of a single partitions. Now, once we have loaded the data and we are retrieving the data. So how to update the items? So for update the items, we are having this CLI command for updating the items. We are using this update item. This update item method is method of a table object can update the existing attribute values and adding new attributes or deleting the attributes from the existing table. So you cannot use the update item method to update any primary key. See, previously no value is there. Now I want to insert it. I want to insert a new node here. So I have inserted it. Likewise, you can also do conditional write operations. You can also do this conditional writes. So this DynamoDB's write operations like your put items, update item, delete items, all are unconditional. Conditional writes basically succeed only if the item attributes meet one or more expected conditions. So conditional write operation shows how the developer could prevent a node update if node has been flagged as favorite for our applications. So this update item conditional expressions check whether the favorite attribute is set to yes or not. If it is set to yes, you cannot update it because that is marked as favorite. So that's this is a situation. This is a use case where this conditional write operations comes into the picture. Now let's see how to delete the items. So for delete the items, we are using this operations delete item method. So if you want to delete a single items in a table or by a primary key, you can perform conditional deletes operations that delete that items if it is like exist or if it is an expected attribute value. So in addition to the deleting items, you can also return the items attribute values in the same operations by using some returns values parameter. So unless you are specifying a conditions, this delete item is a item potent operations which is running in multiple times on the same items. Or this attribute does not have a does not result in an error response. So in this examples, the deleted entry no longer will be appears in the table. Higher level interface. Let's talk about this Java DynamoDB member. So in this code, this DynamoDB table annotations is mapping the nodes item class to the nodes tables. So you can store the individual class instances as items in the tables. In the class definitions, this DynamoDB hash map, like hash key annotations, map the ID property to the primary key, and this is for the Java only. So by default, these class properties are mapped to the attributes of the same names in the tables. And these properties like your user ID, like node ID and nodes, all these properties will be mapped to the attributes of the same name in the table. .NET Object Persistent Model. So this SDK for .NET is providing the object persistent models that you can use, you can use to map your client-side classes to your DynamoDB tables. And each object instance then maps to an items in the corresponding tables. Now to save your client side objects to the tables, you can the object persistent models is providing a DynamoDB context class. .NET document model. So this .NET document model is basically providing a document model class that wrap up some of low level Amazon DynamoDB operations, also simplifying your code. So in these document models, the primary class are table and this primary classes are basically tables and documents. And this table class is also providing you the CRUD operations: create, read, update, delete. So such as put items, get items, delete items. And it is also providing you the feature of a query and scan the methods. So this document class represents a single item in a table. We are having a DynamoDB caching. So two caching options are there. This is a DynamoDB accelerator. In short, we are calling as DAX. This is Elastic Cache. Elastic Cache is a AWS service which is known for in-memory caching. And this DAX is a feature of a DynamoDB, which is improving the as you know, this DynamoDB is only like is is already fast. It is already efficient. But right now it is giving the DynamoDB times response times can be measured in single digit millisecond. But if you are using this DAX, then it will give you the response in microsecond. So for those use cases, we are using the DAX when you need a fast response time for accessing eventually consistent data. And this Elastic Cache is a web service that you can deploy to run the Memcache or Redis protocol in the cloud. And this Elastic Cache is also improves the performance of your web applications. So you can retrieve the information from a fast managed in-memory systems instead of relying on a slower disk-based databases. Let's talk about the DAX more. So this DAX is basically a DynamoDB compatible caching service that you can use to benefit from fast in-memory performance for the demanding applications. And this DAX is also giving you some advantages you are getting the your response in the microseconds, and this is also you can also use the DAX for the when you want to reduce the operational and application complexity because it is providing a managed service that is API compatible with the DynamoDB. So this DAX can respond to the calls like get item, batch get item, query, scan, and it is also support write operations like batch write items, update items, delete item, put items. So it will increase your it will improve your performance of your database. Now we are having a knowledge check. Before going to the knowledge check, let me take your questions regarding the operations on DynamoDB. Yeah, unable to catch up to you, going bit monotonous. Subhashini, also you can you can ask a query so that I can repeat the same thing again. Can you please explain conditional write option? Yeah, conditional write basically I am giving a if I'm using a I'm giving an example like for our application. You are updating a note, like you are creating some notes, and you make this favorite. So suppose when I logged into the applications and I want to delete the same note which is already marked by the favorite by you, so that is not possible, and that things is done with the conditional write. So I am writing, in the conditional write, I have stated that if someone, if the favorite is flagged as yes, if the favorite, if it favorite is it is marked as favorite, then it cannot be deleted. So that I can do with the help of a conditional write option. RCU and WCU is basically a three throughput of your DB, like how fast it is. Can we restrict a developer to create or delete a schema in DynamoDB? If you are asking in related to the permissions or privileges, the answer is yes. You don't give the permissions, like you don't give the reader, like you don't give the right permissions to the developer. Only he can see the dynamo schema. So that's why you can restrict that's how you can restrict a developer in your DynamoDB. Okay, now let's. Which scenario scan is used in the real time? You can take any scenario when you don't want to query the specific things. When there is a need, you have to scan the whole table. So in such scenarios, you are using a scan instead of query. Explicit mapping is basically when you are mapping your data types explicitly. And default mapping is when it is mapped to a data type's default. You are not explicitly defining anything. Yeah. Now I'm taking a questions. So you don't have access to the class, please contact your instructor for assistance. Mank, maybe you are trying with a different link. All the three links are already mentioned. Three labs are there. All the link of the three labs are already mentioned in the in the chat. It is already pinned. Try with a different link. Now let's come to the knowledge check. So like sixth statement is there. Now first we will talk about the first statement. It is true or false? First statement. Correct, it is true. But about the second statement? True, 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 true. Correct, it is also true. What about the third one? What about the third one? True, true, false. Mix of responses I'm getting. Let me help you. Do you know what is the meaning of inconsistent? This is the keyword for you. Okay, now everyone is saying false, false, false. Yeah, correct, correct, correct. It should be on demand. What about the fourth one? Okay, I have already revealed the fourth one. Fourth one is false. What about the fifth one? True, 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 not sure. So yeah, it is true because batch write item cannot update the items. To update the items, you are using the update item action. That's why it is true. What about the sixth one? Which is more efficient? Scan or query? Correct, it is false. Now let me enable the lab number three for all of you. In the lab number three, you will work on DynamoDB using your SDK. And see, a lot of people are saying that their labs is taking time to load. So these labs are basically predefined labs, pre-configured labs. So that's why they are taking such time. So it will take around 10 to 15 minutes to load the lab. If someone labs is taking more than that time, so try to refresh it. It will hardly take times 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, lab 3 is enabled from my side. Everyone, please check and let me know. Lab 3 is enabled or not? Developing solution using Amazon DynamoDB. It is enabled for you. Enabled, able to see. Correct. Ma'am, can you please write your email again in the chat so that I can see? Mank, let's have a 5 minute break. Then I will start again. Giving you 5 minute break. Mank, try with this link. Told multiple times. Also email to your team, but no use. Is there some challenge? Please let me know. Who is this? Nasreen. Nasreen, what issue you are facing? Can you please go back to knowledge check? Once the break is over, then I will show you. Till then, I'm just taking a query of Nasreen. Nasreen, what issue you are facing? Are you there? You still don't have access. Mine, your name is there for the labs. That's why I've shared. Okay, can you please, Nasreen, can you please share your official mail here? Write your official mail in a chat. And Mank, your name is already there. I have just checked. Your name is there. That's why I have given you the lab, this lab link. Let me check the Nasreen name. Nasreen, your name is already there for the lab, for the labs. I'm copying the student URL, giving to you. Try with this. Nasin, click on this link. Let me see for Tanveer Ahmed. Tanveer, your name is already there. Are you not able to access the lab? Oh, so Lakshmi, once the break is over, then I will show you the knowledge check again. Okay, Tanveer, if you are not able to access the labs, try with this link. It is only for Tanveer, which I am pasting now. And Nitin, in this Apache Gocomol link, yeah, its username is not Nitin. Username is student, and password is in the left hand side of the instruction. Username is student, password is in the left hand side of the instruction. Nasreen, did you get the access? How to close the open lab? This is the maximum three open labs. You can end lab. There is one option is showing to you end lab. Click on the end lab. I can see labs. Let me check lab 3. Mang, I have just checked your name. Your name is there, and that's why I have given you the lab link. If it is not there, I will add manually. Your name is already there. Try with some different browser. Or if you are using any kind of VPN or firewall, please try to off it. Okay, we are done with the break. Those who are having an issue regarding the regarding the questions, yeah, now ask. Anyone have any doubt in this knowledge check? I am repeating one more time. Anyone have any doubt in the knowledge check? Explain 5. 5, they are asking like if the batch write item cannot update items, and to update the items, you are using update item action. So batch write items basically means when you are writing some things in bulk. So batch write item cannot update those items. So to update the items, we are using an update item instead of batch write item. 3, 3. Okay. Do you know the meaning of the inconsistent? What's the name? Path. Path. Do you know the meaning of inconsistent? Inconsistent means when you don't when you don't know about the about the capacity, like you don't know like how you are going to be access your data. So in that situations we are not using a provision. Instead of provision we are using on demand. Yeah, unpredictable. What about 4? 4 one is basically this. If I by default this dynamo db write operations are unconditional, not conditional. By default, they are unconditional. If you want to define conditions, then you can do that. But by default, this by default is the keyword for you. By default, they are unconditional. So that's all with this particular modules. Now let's start our next module, that is Lambda. We are starting our next module, that is Lambda. So we need some computing power for our applications. Like we have created our one applications. So we need some computing power for applications. So different methods are there, like EC2 is there for computing, Lambda is there for computing, ECS is there, EKS is there in AWS. Fargate is also there. But we will not talk about all this. We will talk about only Lambda because Lambda is serverless. So let me tell you three things about a Lambda. First thing is it is serverless. Second thing, it is having a 15-minute of execution time. Third thing about Lambda, it is having a 10 GB of memory. Makes sense to everyone? Just remember all these 3 points about a Lambda. It is serverless. It is having a 15-minute of execution time, and it is having a 10 GB of memory. Now let's move forward. After this, I will enable the lab number 4 for you. So by the end of this module, you will be able to explore how Lambda works and Lambda functions using the SDK, configuring the triggers and permissions for Lambda functions, test, deploy, and monitor the Lambda functions. All those things will be covered in this module. Let's see the compute services. So we are having a EC2 instances. EC2 instances are basically are the like virtual machines, VM, which is basically managed services, which is this is the like managed services. So in this you are responsible for managing all those things like patching and all those things. You are responsible. Containers are there. This is a fully managed container tools, fully managed orchestration tools. So you can use the containers as well for the computing things. And this one serverless option is also there. That is named as Lambda. So in this particular module, we will talk about the Lambda mode. This Lambda is a event-driven serverless compute option. Now let me give you the difference between all three: EC2, ECS, and Lambda. So this is the difference. So if I talk about the pricing model, in the pricing model is for the Lambda is they are paying like they are charging you on the basis of a per invocation and run duration and memory used, like how much memory you are using and for how much time you are running your Lambda function. Scalability and concurrency for EC2, you can provision more instances and increase the size of AMI. And this ECS and EKS, you can increase the instance size, add more instances, add more replicas, and configure the load balancing as well. So this Fargate is currently supported in ECS and EKS, which is running the container at the serverless compute model. Now let's see how the Lambda works. This is a like a flow of the Lambda. So as data is flowing through your applications, Lambda can run code in response to observable events. And Lambda also running when it is triggering by the events. So because this Lambda can connect to many AWS service, it can run your code. Like if any event is occurred, if for any event or for any HTTP request or for any API call, it will be triggered. So these all three things can be a source for a Lambda. So with this Lambda, you can run your code for virtually at any type of application on the like or the backend service. And Lambda function is stateless, but it can access the stateful data. So this Lambda programming model is stateless, but your code can access the stateful data by calling the other web services like your DynamoDB or S3. Now let's see which functions, like which event can invoke your Lambda functions. So this Lambda can be integrated with S3, DynamoDB, Kinesis, Cognito, API Gateway, IoT, step functions, Alexa, SNS, SES, Event Bridge, CloudWatch, Code Commit, Cloud Trail, Cloud Formations. These all are can be the source for the Lambda functions to invoke or to trigger. Now let's see the anatomy of Lambda functions. This Lambda function is a resource that you can invoke to run your code in Lambda. So first you are preparing a code, and Lambda function is having a one code handler functions. That handler function is like runs each time whenever the event is occurring. So your code may use some runtimes, and Lambda support runtime for language specific environments like for Node.js, for Java, for Python. So you can write your Lambda in any different language like that. like Python, C++, Java, .NET, C Sharp. And you can also create your own custom runtimes. So those runtime is basically having a components like code and your handler name and invocation events. And also you are passing the event data and posting the response. Runtime is maximum 15 minutes. Yeah, its maximum runtime is 15 minutes. You cannot increase it. So your code can also use the layers that provide the shared code or custom runtimes. So this Lambda function require a permissions that defines what it can interact with. Now let's see the AWS Lambda invocation methods. So basically we are having a three methods. First one is synchronous method or direct invocation. So whenever you are invoking a function synchronously, Lambda running the functions and wait for a response. So functions run immediately when it is invoked. And whenever the function is complete, it runs. Lambda is running the response from the function's code. If I talk about the asynchronous method or push, so whenever you are invoking a function asynchronously, Lambda is sending the event to the queue and separate process reads the event from the queue and running your functions. So when the event is added to the queue, Lambda is returning the success response or any error if it occurs. And last thing is poll-based model. So for this poll-based invocation or for this pull method, you can configure your Lambda resource to a read from a streaming-based or queuing-based event source that can invoke your Lambda functions, like your DynamoDB or your Kinesis or your Kafka. These are the three different methods of the invoking your Lambda function. So this is basically a invocation methods. Like if I talk about the synchronous, no retry option is there. Asynchronous, built-in retry is option there. That is two times you can retry. Poll based, that is depend upon the event source. Which event source you are using, like DynamoDB, Kinesis, what event source you are using. Let's see the Lambda runtime lifecycle. So to understand how this Lambda function works, we have to like consider these things like what is triggers. Triggers basically are the events that are invoking the call and also code. So you are uploading a code in the Lambda functions that on the Lambda's code editor. So that code can be in any supported language that you can use custom runtime or any native libraries. Also you are doing a configurations. Configuration means whenever you are creating the functions, you are specifying a configurations information such as your permissions, resources, credentials, and environment variables. And at the same time, you are having some extensions. So you can integrate the Lambda with some existing tools for the monitoring, for the observability, for security. And we are also having a Lambda runtime environment that will physically invoke your functions in a secure and isolated container created according to a resource which is defined by the configurations. So Lambda then load into the memory, like Lambda then loads into the memory and the memory the code that is to be run. Then this Lambda runtime environment managing the resources required to run your functions and supported the lifecycle of the functions runtime. And the process of creating and mounting the environment is basically your cold start. And the invocation of a Lambda functions after the environment exists is known as the warm start. Now let's see about the concurrency. So new invocation requests are processed with the Lambda, with this Lambda runtime environment that is available. So if runtime is not available, or if runtime environment is busy, new runtime to be created to handle the request. And this new runtime does not share resources with other Lambda runtime environments. So runtime may not be available if it has shut down because an event has not come has not come for some time. And all requests are limited for 15 minutes. 15 minutes means 900 seconds. This is a maximum execution time of Lambda. Now minimize cold start. So to avoid a cold start, you can set triggers for your Lambda functions. And also you can provision the concurrency features in Lambda to prepare your multiple Lambda runtime environment to process the events. Now minimize how to minimize the cold starts. So for that we can use this Lambda snap start. So this Lambda snap start is basically like it basically for the Java you can use to improve the startup performance for latency sensitive applications, and it is increasing your runtimes by 10 times and without any extra cost. But it is only compatible with Java 11 and Java 17. So Lambda can take a firecracker micro beam snapshot of the memory and a disk state of the initialized execution environment. And then it is encrypting the snapshot and cache it for low latency access. So with this snapshot, like a snap start, Lambda initialize your functions whenever you are publishing a function version. So when you are invoking the function version for the first times, it invocation scale ups. Lambda resumes a new execution environments from the cache snapshot instead of initializing them from scratch and improving the startup latency. Now let's see the permissions. So types of permissions related to the Lambda functions. So we are having two types of permission, invocation permission and processing permissions. First, let's talk about the invocation permissions. So these permissions are the that event source needs to be communicate with your Lambda functions. That is your invocation permissions, and that is depends on the invocation model. And also you can grant these permissions using the execution role or resource-based resource policies. Then we are having a processing permissions. Processing permissions means these permissions that your Lambda function needs to access other AWS resources in your account, and you are granting those permissions by creating your role, which is known as the execution role. Now let's see this push or direct invocation model. Like I'm showing you the flow of a push or direct invocation model. So in that you are having a RDS. Sorry, we are having a resource policy, and we are having a IAM execution role and access policy as well. So this gives other accounts and AWS service permission to use your Lambda resources. IAM execution role is basically granting the function permissions to access the AWS services and some other resources. Access policy is granting the needed resource permissions. So the entity that invokes your Lambda functions must have a permissions to do so. So for that, either you can create a like service role or like execution role. Either you can assign those permissions manually also. Let's see this pull or polling invocation model. So this pull event model, Lambda pulls the event source and invokes your Lambda functions when it detects an event. So this model applies when AWS Lambda is used with streaming event sources like your Kinesis and DynamoDB. And this Lambda pulls your Kinesis data streams or DynamoDB streams when it is invoking your Lambda functions. It detects the new records in the streams. So for that, you are granting a Lambda permissions to read from the stream. Let's see how to develop. Develop means how to you will interact with the Lambda. So you can use any method. You can use console, you can use CLI, you can use SDK. Apart from that, you can also use third-party IDEs. That means your Eclipse, your PyCharm, your Visual Studio, or any. And also, you can develop the same thing on your Cloud9 as well. That is your web-based IDE. Planning a Lambda function. So with this Lambda, you can use normal language and operating system features like you are creating additional threads and processes. So you can do that with the help of a Lambda. Also, this SDK is providing a language specific APIs that is managing many of the connection details. So the runtime for Python and Node.js have the SDK built in. So you do not have to bundle those SDKs with your code. And as I am saying that it is Lambda it is stateless. So that means like keeping your Lambda function is stateless. But by doing this, Lambda can rapidly launch as many as copies of the function as it is needed to scale. And this Lambda also, like Lambda programming is stateless, but your code can access the stateful data by using your S3 and DynamoDB. Need someone to monitor the chat, answer the queries, as he is not answering all the queries. Gopinath, I think that times you are not there. I have decided to take your queries at the end of the modules. Once I will complete the modules, at the end, I will give you the 10 minutes times to answer your queries. Developing options only I am just showing you how you can interact with the Lambda. So three methods are there like console, CLI, SDK, as well as also you can interact with the Lambda using your Cloud9 or your third-party IDs like Eclipse, PyCharm, Visual Studio Code, and all that. Any doubt in this? Whatever queries you have, let's just make a note of it. Once I will complete the whole module, like this lambda about the lambda, then I will take all your queries. So no worries. Yeah, so I am explaining that lambda is stateless, but it can access the stateful data as well by calling some other AWS services like your DynamoDB or S3. Also, like this monitoring and logging is already there inside a because as you know, this Lambda is serverless. There is no need to monitor or log the log with the help of any monitoring service like CloudWatch, CloudTrail. So we are using Lambda metrics and CloudWatch alarms instead of creating or updating a metrics from within your Lambda function code. So it is the health of your Lambda function. So you can catch the issue in the early process, and you can also configure the alarm based on the expected duration of your Lambda functions. Can we get access of this session for next 30 days with slides so that we can revise and prepare for exam smoothly? See, this PPTs and this all the course material is already given to you, so you can prepare from that. But if you're asking for the recording and all those things, that is not possible. So we cannot provide you the recordings, but the whole content is already provided to you. All the course content, whatever I am providing to you, all the content is already available to you, and the labs are already there for you for 30 days. So now let's talk about the handler function. So when a lambda function is invoked, the handler is basically running a code, and handler is the specific code method that is your Java or C# code, and that you have created and that is included in your package. So you are specifying the handler when it is creating a lambda functions. So each language that lambda supports has its own requirements for how a function handler can be defined and referenced within the package. So we are having two types of handler functions. One is event object, another one is context object. Event object means data is sent during an invocation, and context object means we are providing the information about the current runtime environment. So whenever your lambda function is invoked in one of the supported language, one of the parameters provided to your handler function is an event object. And if I talk about the context object basically lambda function is also provided with a context object. So that context object allows your function code to interact with the lambda runtime environment. And the content and the structures of the context objects vary based on the language runtimes your lambda function is using. So, and it is also it is having some elements like your AWS request ID, this context object, timeout, logging, all those things are already there in the context object. Now let's see this S3 event. So this is the this is the S3 event. So this format of the event it is carrying some payload and depending on the AWS service that is invoking your functions. So this is basically S3 event that is invoking my Lambda functions. So I have defined all those things here to invoke my Lambda functions. Now let's see what is context. So we are having a some like in Python we are having a context methods. In Java we are having some context methods. In .NET as well we are having some context properties. So these context methods, like if I talk about in Java, we are having these context methods like get remaining time in millis. So that means it is returning the number of milliseconds that left before the lambda runtime limit is reached. That is 15 minutes. Get function name, get function version, get invoke function ARN, memory limit in MB, AWS request ID. So all these are context methods which you can use in your code. And every context method have a different use cases. See how the function handler looks like in Python. So this handler is a function call that calls to start your Lambda function. And this Lambda is passes any event data to the handler functions as the first parameter. So your handler is processing the event data and invoking your other functions or other methods in your code. So this example has one function called my handler. And this function is returning a message that contains the data from the event it received as input. This is the another function which is in Java. So in this example, input is of type integer type and output is of string type. So if you are packaging this code and packaging the code and the dependencies and create your Lambda functions, you are specifying the examples. So in this example, Java code, the first handle parameter is the input to the handler. That is your my handler. This- which can be a event data or some custom input which you are providing, like any integer object or any custom data object. Now let's see the function handler in .NET as well. So whenever you are creating a Lambda functions, you are specifying a handler that AWS Lambda can invoke when the service runs the function for you. And you are also defining the Lambda functions handler as an instance or static methods in a class. So if you want to access to the Lambda context object, it is available by defining a method parameter of type I Lambda context. And this parameter is the basically a interface that you can use to access the information about the current run or memory limit or runtime and all those things. All these are components of the of that thing function handler. This is how your Lambda function looks like. This is the code of the Lambda function. So what I'm doing, I am pulling information for the event, then I am pull information from the event variables, then I am separating the Lambda handler from your core logic. So I have defined the Lambda functions inside the either you can do the same things in your Cloud9 or in the Lambda code editor. So you can do and you can choose any methods to create your Lambda functions that will invoke. Now let's see environment variables. So we are having an environment variables to pass the operational parameters to your functions. So if you are writing to S3 bucket, so instead of hard coding the bucket name, you can write the environment variables, and then you are configuring the bucket name as the environment variable. Now using the Lambda API, so we are having a different Lambda APIs like create functions, update function code, update function configuration, invoke. So you can use these Lambda APIs inside your code that is having a different use cases. How to create a function using CLI? So this is the CLI command. How? So this example is basically we are creating a Lambda functions in Python and specifying a handler function name also. And this command is basically using some IAM role, Lambda poly role, and this environment variable is already set inside my CLI command. Update the function configuration. So with update function configuration, you can change the configuration details of the Lambda functions such as your memory, your timeout, environment variables, and many more things inside the CLI command. Now, how to control the runtime environment with versions and analysis. So Lambda functions are versioned, and whenever you are publishing a new versions, the version number is incremented and the earlier version is stored. So you can publish one or more versions of your Lambda functions, and each version is having a unique ARN. Just like we are having version 1, version 2, version 3. That's how you like version 3. This is the latest versions. That's how you can do this. So some services are need to use to like some services are there which you need to select the latest versions. So likewise, I can do if I'm defining the versions, I can use those things. Now shared code with layers. So layer is basically a .zip archive file that contains your code beyond the business logic and your libraries and custom runtimes and some other dependencies. So with layers, you can share such code across the different versions of the same functions or across multiple functions in a workload. So these functions can continue to have the same access to the dependencies and also use the less storage. So deployed layer is also immutable. Like this deployed layer is the immutable versions. And each time a new layer is published, the version number increments. So when you are including a layer in a function, so you can also specify the layer versions that you want to use. How to create a layer? So you can create a layers using the AWS management console. So your libraries, dependencies to your code or your custom runtimes can be zipped as a part of your build and deploy process of your Lambda functions. So this means that you cannot easily share those libraries and dependencies or runtimes with the other functions or other AWS accounts. So it means you cannot change easily make the change and have those changes propagated to all the functions that uses the same time. Now, how to test the Lambda function? So this upload in the deployment package, and we are having a separate shared dependencies and upload them as a layer. So this way you can test your Lambda functions more effectively by having a deployment package. What is the need of objective? Like what is the need of a testing our Lambda functions? So we are testing our Lambda functions because we want to test the performance of your function, performance of your Lambda. We want to test your Lambda functions for timeouts. We want to understand the Lambda limits. As you know, there is a 15-minute execution time. That is the maximum time for the that Lambda function can run. So for those things, we are testing our Lambda functions. So testing can be done by the console as well, CLI as well, and SDK as well. Also, you can perform the testing with the help of a SAM. What is SAM? SAM we will see in the module number 12 in detail. What is SAM? Till now, I can say that SAM is basically a serverless application model, which is used to deploy your serverless application. Next thing is how to invoke a Lambda functions. So when you are invoking a Lambda functions, you are providing some information. Like you need the function name, function ARN, function partial ARN. So if you are invoking the specific version number and qualifying the ARN with the version prefix, and some other parameters are also there to invoke the functions. So that basically specifies how your function should run. So that event can be asynchronous and there is request response is also there and try run is also there. All those things are already there in when you are invoking your Lambda functions, like your the client context, payload, log type. How to invoke a function using CLI. So this is a CLI command to invoke a Lambda function. We are defining the function name and also payload inside your CLI command. How to handle the errors inside your like inside your Lambda functions. So these two types of errors are there. First one is invocation errors inside your Lambda functions. Another one is your function errors. If I talk about the invocation errors are basically caused when invocation request is rejected before your function receive it. And function errors are caused by the function code or the runtimes. So some like to avoid these errors because of the 1000 account like 1000 accounts concurrent runtime limit is there. So to minimize the throttling, you can reserve some part of the concurrency for your lambda. So if your system depends on retries, you always make sure that your code is idempotent. So this means that it can be retried multiple times without causing a duplicate transactions or some unwanted side effects. Once the testing is done, now we are deploying our Lambda function. So Lambda support two types of deployment package, container image and .zip file archives. So this Lambda runtime environment contains a number of libraries like your SDK or Node.js for Python runtimes. So if you want to enable Subh it was better when you are taking questions now and then it was more interactive and interesting. But see, actually, what the thing is, 287 participants are there right now. It's not possible to take 287 queries in these 4 hours. And 15 modules are there. So that's how I'm thinking to take the queries in the end of the modules. You can just write down your queries. I'm not saying like I will not take your queries. I will take your queries. Just write down your queries, and we will discuss. We will have a discussion on that. So I'm talking about the packaging considerations. So once like we want to deploy our Lambda function. So for that we are having a two methods. Either you can do with the container images. Either you can use the .zip file archives. So this is basically controlling the dependencies in your function deployment package, and also it is minimizing the deployment package size to its runtime necessities. Also, it is minimizing the complexity of your dependencies. And this is basically in the Node.js. If I talk about the Node.js, Ruby, Python and Ruby. So if you want to create a Lambda functions, so first you have to create a .zip archive file. This is supported the .zip archive file. In the Java, you have to you have to create some .zar file, and for the .NET Core, you have to create some .dll file for the deployment. And we are using this npm pip for installing or building the packages. And you all are developer, you know very well like what to use. Like we are using Maven for Java, we are using this Nugget or Visual Studio plugins for the .NET. Next thing is how to deploy using containers. So you are creating your project and code, then you are building a container image on the basis of on the base of your code. Then you are uploading that image to the containers like ECR. ECR basically is your Elastic Container Registry. We are putting that image in the ECRs, and on the basis of that image, we are creating a Lambda functions using a container image. So on the basis of that, like first you are having your code, you are giving your code to the builder container, and builder container is giving that code to the ECR, and that ECR is giving the code to to create a Lambda functions using that container image. Lambda function limits. So the maximum time is 15 minutes, as you know, and it is having a 10 GB of memory. And those all things are there. So, like what is the memory allocations? What is the burst concurrency? And what is the invocation payloads? What is the deployment package? All those things are mentioned in this slide. Now we are having a knowledge check. So before going to the knowledge check, now I am open to your questions. Whatever the questions you have noted till now, just ask. Actually, we are very short of time. That's why I'm implementing this strategy. Otherwise, you know me very well. In the first day and the second day, I am taking the questions in between. and lot of participants are basically the queries regarding the labs, regarding the vital source. So also we are trying to solve those queries as well in the meanwhile. Yeah, we are trying to do that, but some people are there, some participants are there who still don't have the lab access, and it's our duty, it's trainer duty to give the lab access. So time is consumed in in that way also. Today you can see most of the people are there who don't have the lab access, and my I think my half an hour is consumed by those people. It's not like that. Who is this Shukla? It's not like that. It will be a 3 week session. It's only a 3 day session. Like it is 24-hour session. And the 24 hours, I have I am guiding I am guiding participants for the lab as well and for the theory as well for the concept as well. So it's not needed more times. But in your case, what the thing is, 600 plus people are there. So all are asking the questions and all are having the issue regarding the labs and all those things. So that's why the time is consumed. Is there any possibility of extending the season for few more days? I don't have that much idea, but I will try to like uh, make it like uh, make it a little slow and to make it understandable for you. Yeah, please go ahead. You can ask a question. Lambda gave you execution for 15 minutes. What if you exceeded the computation time? See, for the computations, we are having a different options like EC2, Lambda, ECS, ECR. So why we are choosing a Lambda? First, we have to understand that we are choosing Lambda because we don't need a execution. We don't need a much more execution. Suppose uh, you are having a Alexa in your home. Arvind, do you have the Alexa in your home? Yes. So if you are asking Alexa, hey Alexa, what is the weather today? Do you think it need more time to compute the same thing? What in approx how much time it needed to compute the same things? How's the weather today? How is the weather today? How much time it is needed to compute? So it does not need it does not need that much times. That's why we are using this lambda. Lambda will be used by in such use cases when you don't need that much compute times. If you needed a long compute times, then we are not using a lambda. Instead of a lambda, we can use ECS, we can use AC2. But if you are asking, can I exceed the exceed the execution times? Can I increase the execution times? So this lambda is having this lambda having a fixed time of 15 minutes. But some options are there. Like you can use lambda chaining, and also you can use various lambda functions. Like I can for our application, what I will do, I will dedicate one lambda function for creation of the nodes. I will dedicate one lambda functions for updating the nodes. I will dedicate one function lambda functions for deletion of the nodes. Likewise, I can do, but I don't need a very long computation time. That's why I'm using lambda. Which is the best option? Gopinath, it totally depends upon your use case. If you don't need a long runtime, like a long runtime, so you can go with the lambda. And if you are having a use case more than 15 minutes, and if you want to stick to the lambda, then you can use the method of lambda chaining. Can RDS invoke a lambda functions? Yes, RDS can invoke a lambda function. RDS can invoke a lambda functions. DynamoDB can also invoke a lambda function. S3 event notification can also invoke a lambda function. Yeah, now let me see who is that. Lambda runtime lifecycle quite not getting. Could you please explain again? Let me show you the lambda runtime cycle again. And I can see many of you are asking about the warm start and the cold start, I think. Short-lived means it is useful microservices. You can say that it's totally upon your use case. Yeah, I know in the microservices we are having a different components, and all those components are totally independent on each other. Like they are not dependent on each other. So you can use that. Yeah. So we are seeking for yeah warm start and cold start. So this warm start and cold start basically like the first first we are creating an environment life cycle. So the process of creating and mounting the environment, that is called basically your cold start. Let me repeat again. The process of creating and mounting the environment. This is a lambda runtime environment. So I'm creating and mounting the environment, and that is known as my cold start. And the invocation of a lambda function. See, here I'm invoking a lambda functions. Once the information, once the creation and invocation is done, like once the creation and mounting is done, then I am invoking a lambda functions. So the invocation of a lambda functions after the environment exists. Now my environment exists. Now it's invocated. So this invocation is basically known as warm start. Makes sense to everyone? Cold start and now, yeah, lambda runtime lifecycle. Let me also show you that. There is that lambda runtime lifecycle. Yeah, this is lambda runtime lifecycle. You can also see by yourself also, like suppose one event is occurred, and on the basis of that event, your lambda is getting occurred, and then you are creating and increasing your runtime environment. And the on this runtime environment, you are defining all those things. Suppose in the code editor, you are writing some code. Like if such happens, if such event occurs, then like suppose if someone is if I have created one bucket, and if someone is uploaded one object inside it, invoke this lambda function, and in the inside a code I have written this if this lambda function invoked, then give a notifications to some user like Gopinath. I have configured Gopinath credentials. I have configured Gopinath email and all those things. So when someone is trying to upload something in my bucket, I want that I would get notified. So those things I can do with the help of Lambda. So that this event will invoke the Lambda, and with the help of a Lambda, I have written some code, and in the on the basis of that, I will get a notification on my email or on my mobile number. And this whole process, how it will invoked, this whole process is already there in the labs. In the lab number 4, when you are doing the same things with your hands on, like when you are doing the same things in the practical. See, this developer course is more about the practical. Whatever things I'm explaining to you, if you are not doing the practical of those things, that will be of no use. So please make sure to complete the lab as soon as possible. Can we say lambda function is a kind of VM where we define the specific functions to execute a task like which is the maximum times? Exactly, Rachit. At the beginning of the session, I have already said that it is just like it is just a computing thing. Computing thing means when we are computing something. How become BM is similar to lambda? See, BM, I am trying to relate this BM. Like let's just example for a compute thing, for a computational power, you are using some virtual machines. Just like that, for a computational power, we can also use the lambda instead of EC2. It's not like a actual BM. where you are like accessing the VM, we are installing something and you are running your code and all those things. It's not like the actual VM. Yeah, it's not an actual VM, but it can do the task of VMs. Like it can do the computational task which your server is doing in the backend. See, whose name is there? Ankit. Ankit is saying that yeah, Ankit, it's Ruchit. Ruchit is saying that lambda function is a kind of VM where we define the specific functions. It is correct. Inside a lambda, you can define the specific functions to execute your task, like your CRUD operations, create, react, update, delete, just like the same thing which we are doing in our application, Polynodes application. Yeah, lambda demo is already covered in the lab number 4. So it's my request to everyone, please do the lab number 4. Okay, let me take the more questions. Would you please suggest any real-world example of operation commuting what is lambda function is not suitable to perform? For example, you are hosted your web applications. For that, lambda function is not suitable because you need like that will be up and running every time. So if you are running your web application on the lambda, it is not a best. It is not suited for those things. Okay, I think we are done with. What are the handlers? You see this one. What are all handlers, context classes available to connect to different databases, SQL servers, MongoDB, MySQLs? No, no, it's not like that. Let me show you again. You are talking about the context methods. So see, these are the context methods. These context methods are theirs, like basically which you can include inside your code to like different context methods are there. So these are some properties that is providing the information about about the current runtime environment. Suppose I am running like I am using this context method, get remaining time in millisecond. So it is basically returning the number of millisecond left before the lambda can reach the limit. It's not related to the like databases, SQL server, or it's not related to the databases. Okay, so we are done with this. Now we are on the knowledge check. Okay, now you will answer. Now it's my time. I will ask a question and you will answer. Okay, people are saying true. What about the other folks? Yeah, Swapnil is saying false. Swapnil, can you please give the explanation why it is false? Salman, you also give your explanation. Let me see how you're understanding about the lambda. Okay, at the initial point, at the beginning of the module, I have said that thing, it is serverless. What this means? Managed by AWS. So same thing they are saying. Lambda handles the service capacity and deployment needs for you. So you means you are not managing it. When you are not managing it, so who is managing it? AWS is managing it. That's why it's true. What about the second one? Okay, Ruchit is saying serverless means IAM user don't need to handle the server settings. And what about the root user? It's not like a IAM user, root user. It means a user. Don't include this word IAM user. Second one, second one, everyone saying true. Let me give you the hint. All your AWS Lambda function need not invocation permission, they need a processing permission. So second one is false. What about the third one? Third one, everyone say false. Yeah, it is false. What about the fourth one? Fourth one. Correct. Fourth one is true. Fifth one. Yeah, fifth one is also true. Sixth one. Let me highlight something for you. This same thing I have repeated, I think, even 5 to 6 times in a session. Correct. It is true. Lambda is stateless, but it can still access the stateful data by using some services like S3 and DynamoDB. Now let me enable the lab number 4. Please explain the fourth one, please. Fourth one, let me see. So if you enable the DynamoDB stream on a table, you can associate a stream to a ARN with Lambda functions that you write. Yeah, it's correct. See what I'm doing. This is my DynamoDB, and DynamoDB is basically acting as a source for my Lambda function. So that can be possible. This DynamoDB streams I am associating with the Lambda. Is it not possible? It's possible. Okay, now I'm enabling the lab number 4. And lab number 4 is all about a Lambda. So whatever I have explained to you, that all will be covered in the lab 4. Like most of you are asking for a demo, so all these demos are already covered in the lab 4. So please do the lab 4 image like as soon as possible. And if someone is finding the issue in the lab 4, then let me know. We will discuss those issues tomorrow. Yeah, you will do lab after the class. Now everyone please check and let me know if the lab 4 is enabled to you or not. So we are done with this module, module number 9. Now we will see module number 10. Module number 10 is all about the API gateway. We are having half an hour. So let's see. Amit, to which link like by that link like previously you are trying to access, try the same link. Left 4 is like left 4 is in the when you scroll down, left 4 is also there. Try the same link. Yeah, we can. Yeah, I'm also thinking about it. We can have a break of 5 minutes, then I'm starting.